One reason I have trouble reading is because I either get very excited about how right it is when it's sort of when I read a book that is saying things that people that I'm talking to aren't saying, and it's like, yes, fuck, finally it's here, black and white. Why? Okay, and it just overwhelms me. So anyway, I was at the laundromat reading. I'm gonna read a piece, a bit that I read. And then I just like us to write. I don't know. I need to get something off my chest or something. And I want us to do that together. Okay. Page 27. Jonathan Haidt, The Righteous Mind: Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. So we're at the end of chapter 1. Where does morality come from? He talks about how it used to be thought in moral psychology, which was considered just a part of developmental psychology. It used to be thought that basically, as children develop, um, they wait a minute, wait a minute. We're going to read the summary of the chapter. Where does morality come from? The two most common answers have long been that it is innate, the nativist answer, or that it comes from childhood learning, the empiricist answer. In this chapter, I consider a third possibility, the rationalist answer, which dominated moral psychology when I entered the field. That morality is self constructed by children on the basis of their experiences with harm, which is which definitely includes the empiricist answer. Kids know that harm is wrong because they hate to be harmed, and they gradually come to see that it is therefore wrong to harm others, which leads them to understand fairness and eventually justice. And it's so silly. It's so silly. I would never. What? And I mean, if you've been on this channel, like with It Theory, when you stop using words like reason and rational and thinking and so on, and you just think of the brain is being composed of a whole bunch of if then instincts, and the sum just looks like thinking, but it's really just dominoes, and it's just these sort of each of these actors, um, then this just seems obviously not true, and also, all right, well, let's keep going. I explained why I came to reject this answer after conducting research in Brazil. I concluded instead that the moral domain varies by culture. It is unusually narrow in Western educated we're going to skip some stuff. People sometimes have gut feelings, particularly about disgust and disrespect, that can drive our reasoning. Moral reasoning is sometimes a post hoc fabrication, and that's what the thing I'm going to read about from a page before this. Morality can't be entirely self constructed by children based on their growing understanding of harm. Also, understanding, it's another word that's just really actually not that useful. Or at least we need to redefine it for it to become useful again. Um, okay. If morality doesn't come primarily from reasoning, then that leaves some combination of innateness and social learning as the most likely candidates. In the rest of this book, I'll try to explain how morality can be innate as a set of evolved intuitions and learned as children learn to apply those intuitions within a particular culture. We're born to be righteous, but we have to learn what exactly people like us should be righteous about. So we're going to go back to page 27. He's done this awesome experiment. He's a grad student. He's done this awesome experiment uh, in two cities in Brazil and in Philadelphia, where he's at school. And basically, he'll ask people. Okay, for instance, so he made up dozens of stories. And it's the question is if people hear the story and say that person in the story is wrong, the question is it a moral violation, perhaps based on harm, or is it just a violation of social convention? But then, well, as he's designing the experimenter before, he learns that that distinction is actually more of a Western thing. That moral violations require harm to be done, and everything else is just a violation of a social convention. But there are groups like there are some people on the coast of India that Schweeder, a psychologist discovered that for them, even if there's no harm involved, an action can still be a moral violation. Okay, so for instance, two of the stories that he's already shared with us is, let me just read it exactly how it was. Um, he worked hard on these stories, so I'd rather not. Okay. A family's dog was killed by a car in front of their house. They had heard that dog meat was delicious, so they cut up the dog's body and cooked it and ate it for dinner. Nobody saw them do this. Okay? That's one story that he would give. Typically, Westerners would say, all right, I don't like that. That's disgusting, but okay, it's not it's not a moral violation, doesn't, maybe there's no harm, maybe. Okay, here's a more challenging story. A man goes to the supermarket once a week and buys a chicken. But before cooking the chicken, he has sexual intercourse with it. Then he cooks it and eats it. All right, so another no harm, but it does trigger disgust. And Westerners, but if you are not a liberal or libertarian Westerner, you probably think it's wrong, morally wrong, for someone to have sex with a chicken carcass and then eat it. Okay, now let's get to this bit, this thing that surprised Tate. Section. We're still in, of course, Where Does Morality Come From? The chapter. Page 27, section Inventing Victims. Even though the results came out just as Schweeder had predicted, there were a number of surprises along the way. The biggest surprise was that so many subjects tried to invent victims. Not at all a surprise. I had written the stories carefully to remove all conceivable harm to other people. Yet in 38% of the 1,620 times that people heard a harmless, offensive story, they claimed that somebody was harmed. In the dog story, for example, many people said that the family itself would be harmed because they would get sick from eating dog meat. And this process, he used a number of terms for it, including post hoc fabrications. We call it Ajing. It's the automatic, sort of almost shameless justification of what was last delivered from the brain or what was previously delivered. And it's not reasoned. It's just a call went out in the brain. Assuming that the last thing we said is true, why could it? Why what sings as a reason? And then the person just sends it out. And some people are obviously more shameless than others and just have no idea that they're sending out absolute nonsense. I mean, nobody ever knows when we're sending out nonsense, but gee, some people catch themselves more than 0% of the time. In the dog story, for example, many people said that the family itself would be harmed because they would get sick from eating dog meat. Was this an example of the informational assumptions that Turiel had talked about? Were people really condemning the actions because they foresaw these harms? Or was it the reverse process? Were people inventing those harms because they had already condemned the actions? I conducted many of the Philadelphia interviews myself, and it was obvious that most of these supposed harms were post hoc fabrications. And we just spell that A-J, Aj. And then when it's like clearly either a mala, which is, a maladaptive it, or when in order to justify their delivery, they attribute the delivery to something that is actually not the source of their delivery, which is a misattribution. So rather than sharing the it with us, the real it that is the source of the delivery, they will say, well, I know I'm saying that because of this. And it's like, all right, even if that's true, I don't believe that that's why you're saying that. And I think it's very telling maybe what the actual it is. So I wanna dig a little deeper there. Um, I conducted many of people usually condemned the actions very quickly. They didn't seem to need much time to decide what they thought, but it often took them a while to come up with a victim, and they usually offered those victims up half-heartedly and almost apologetically. As one subject said, well, I don't know, maybe the woman will feel guilty afterward um, about throwing out her flag. All right, that was another story. That was meant to be a harmless one, but that was offensive. A woman has an American flag, finds it in her attic. She's cleaning or something, and she ends up throwing it out. Or no, didn't she turn it into like a something? Oh, she shredded it and she used the fabric to clean her house or her kitchen or her bathroom. Of course, by the way, if it was her bathroom, that's going to be more shocking, right? American flag plus bathroom, ugh, right? I mean, especially if you're an American and grew up with that kind of thing. Okay. So, as one subject said, well, I don't know, maybe the woman will feel guilty afterward about throwing out her flag. Many of these victim claims are downright preposterous, such as the child who justified his condemnation of the flag shredder by saying that the rags might clog up the toilet and cause it to overflow. But something even more interesting happened when I or the other interviewers challenged these invented victim claims. I had trained my interviewers to correct people gently when they made claims that contradicted the text of the story. For example, if someone said it's wrong to cut up the flag because a neighbor might see her do it and he might be offended, the interviewer replied, well, it says here in the story that nobody saw her do it, so would you still say it was wrong for her to cut up her flag? Yet, even when subjects recognized that their victim claims were bogus, they still refused to say that the act was okay. Instead, they kept searching for another victim. They said things like, I know it's wrong. I just can't think of a reason why. And one of my favorite is people won't. I don't think people as that often say I can't think of a reason why. They usually say I just can't think of the words right now, or I'm just having trouble expressing it. It's right here. It's on the tip of my tongue. A full reason, and I think they really believe that. And it's I just can't. I'm not as good with words as you, Eris. So stop putting me on the spot, Eris. Okay, I'm sorry. They seem to be morally dumbfounded, rendered speechless by their inability to explain verbally what they. These are my quotes. Knew intuitively. These subjects were reasoning. No, they weren't, Dr. Haight. They were working quite hard at reasoning. There's no current sort of definition or image of reasoning that matches what was actually happening psychologically. But it was not reasoning in search of truth. It was reasoning in support of their emotional reactions. It was reasoning as described by the philosopher David Hume, who wrote in 1739 that reason is and ought only to be the slave of the passions and can never pretend to any other office than to serve and obey them. All right, I guess that definition of reason, that kind of works. I mean, that's not a definition, but what that's alluding to as reason is just as Ajing is going and getting reasons without real evaluation. All right. So then, now remember, I have another video where I talked about him, and he talked about the elephant and the rider. That the elephant is sort of our intuition, our instincts, and so on. And then we've got this human rider on top who's our whatever, reasoning, whatever. And we often think that the rider's in control, but he isn't. He serves the elephant. And I told you that my metaphor 10 years ago was about a dog. Um, and we have to be the masters of the dog rather than just doing whatever the dog says. By the way, I was in the pharmacy the other day, and I'm keeping Neo close to me. And there's a guy, and he's standing by Neo. He's talking to the pharmacist next to my pharmacist. And he looks down at Neo and just takes it upon himself to pet Neo on the like that. Neo didn't do anything, thank goodness, because like, the guy had already been there. The guy didn't just like walk up, I guess. But I didn't think. But I kept my eye on him, and I think I was also maybe talking to him. I was like, all right, good boy, something like that. And the guy says to me, dogs are smart. They know when it's a good person. Something like that. Just like. Anyway, so then I see this. Now I'm reading Chapter 2, The Intuitive Dog and Its Rational Tail. And that's great. So if we imagine most of the brain is this dog energy, and then the rational tail, it's just following whatever the dog will blah. You know. Alright, that actually, oh boy. I don't actually even think I can read this. I'm guessing a lot of keywords that are I'm seeing words like soul and perfectly rational. All right, we're gonna read this together. All right, here we go. All right, here we go. The intuitive dog and its rational tail. Awesome. Okay. Are you ready? One of the greatest truths in psychology is that the mind is divided into parts that sometimes conflict. Yes. Check. To be human is to be pulled in different directions. No, there's no human being pulled. It's just elements going in different directions. There's no, you can, it's just not useful to imagine a homunculus inside the mind. Now, you could kind of imagine whatever the future behavior is, as it's being produced, that future is being pulled in one direction or the other as the things interact, maybe. I don't know, but it just seems like a stretch. To be human is to feel. Oh, feel. Okay, so sure, yes. To be human is, but I also feel pushed. I know that I am constituted of these mechanisms. So no, I don't feel like an entity that is being pulled by sort of inner exterior forces, like forces within me, but outside of the most essential part of me. To be human is to feel pulled in different directions and to marvel, sometimes in horror, at your inability to control your own actions. Doesn't even make sense once you understand it theory. What do you mean control your own actions? Like there is an it that is going to compete with another it. So there is an it that. God damn it! How much did you miss? My mic died. All right. Really just a placebo effect. There's nothing in there. But I do feel it, so that's great. So, here's where we left off. I don't know where you left me, but it's just not useful to imagine a homunculus. And what is control? What is self control? So, there is not a homunculus in the brain that is controlling the elephant, the dog, whatever, the system one, whatever. Instead, control is sort of, there's no control, but we'll say inhibition is distributed across inhibitory mechanisms. And a mechanism is inhibitory if its then is stop or no. So, for instance, I don't know whether you heard, but I gave the example of if you have the instinct, well, I'm going to go touch that woman's butt. If that's in it, because surely there's in it, if I see a feature or body feature that I like, then touch it. And that's in it. That's appropriate when you're both in bed together and there's consent and stuff, but not appropriate when you're walking down the street or when you're on the beach or something. So typically for most of us, there's another it in there. If I am doing something at all sexual in public, then stop. If I am doing anything sexual with someone that I don't know, stop. These are norm violations, stop. And so then when I see the nice butt, all right, I'm not really an example of this, I'm not all that sexual, but this is what I feel like other humans, not that they even, okay, anyway. See a butt, whether or not that is real loud, that first it that goes, if butt then touch, I don't know. Some people it's loud, some people it isn't. In any case, for almost everybody, and maybe I'm exaggerating when I say for almost everybody, I don't know what it's like to be a woman. But for a lot of people, the then of touch butt triggers the if I want to touch butt, or if I want to do something sexual then with someone in public, then stop. So that second it is the inhibition of the first it, and that is inhibition. There's no such thing as really control, which is why we just keep running in circles talking absolute nonsense to addicts and anybody about, yeah, but you have self-control, blah, blah, blah. Or ADHD people or depression or whatever. Oh, but you have self-control. Nobody does. It's just a question of whether you have those right inhibitory mechanisms installed. And then if you don't, well, it may be possible to install them through practice. But that's the kind of stuff we got to figure out on this channel. Exactly how that would work. I know how to sort of uninstall, no heed, no need, and refute to mute. Those are two principles based on how neurons work. To uninstall, a true installation's probably maybe impossible. I don't know. But so then your best bet is actually that guy who did grab that woman's butt, who did go deliver that behavior. There could have been the inhibitory it, but it just wasn't strong enough for that first it. So that's how the behavior made it out. So you can just practice that maybe if it already exists. So you would be enforcing it rather than installing it. Right, so to be human is to feel pulled in different directions and to marvel senselessly, and sometimes in horror, senselessly, like you're a bunch of it's, like, at you don't exist. If I open you up right now, I'm gonna go, holy shit, you're just a million pieces. There's no you in here. Now there's a you. This whole thing, I guess, is you. Oh wait, but not even all those millions of pieces are running at the same time. So you are kind of just whichever pieces are running at a given moment. Holy shit. Okay? There's no little dude in there, all right? You don't exist. So, I mean, your inability to control your own actions, it's just meaningless. Of course, this doesn't mean that we should be doing whatever we want. Okay? It means we have to be realistic about how good inhibition, how good morality functions. Anyway, he's going to address it, I'm sure. I'm too excited, though. I'm too excited because I swear to God, if he says it, it's these moments when I feel a little bit confident that the things I'm saying might actually be right, and I'm not just a crazy person. So, alright, let's do this. Because I mean, really, he's talking to you using your language, so I really shouldn't even be going. Stop it, hate. And that's his name, hate. Okay. To be human is to feel pulled in different directions and to marvel, sometimes in horror, at your inability to control your own actions. The Roman poet Ovid lived at a time when people thought diseases were caused by imbalances of bile, but he knew enough psychology to have one of his characters lament, "I am dragged along by a strange new force. Desire and reason are pulling in different directions. I see the right way and approve it, but follow the wrong." What bullshit that you see the right way. In my interviews, I've talked to people about truth and the soul and all this stuff. I've had people think that diseases are caused by imbalances of energy. Before it was bile, now it's energy. Um, and then also, I had a woman the other day. She goes, I go, "And where's your soul?" She goes, "Here," and immediately says, like, "When I know something to be true, I feel it here." She says, "Here, sometimes it misleads me, but when I feel it here, I know it to be true." What test did you do to check whether it was actually true? Or did your heart just beat a funny way, and so you were like, "Oh, this is therefore true," and that's it? I don't believe you at all. I don't believe you. I don't believe that Ovid's character could see the right way and approve it while following the wrong. I know that's also possible, but it's also possible that he doesn't see the right way. Look, lots of combinations of what he sees, what he approves, and what he does are possible, is my point. Ancient thinkers gave us many metaphors to understand this conflict, but few are more colorful than the one in Plato's dialogue, Timaeus. The narrator, Timaeus, explains how the gods created the universe, including us. Timaeus says that a creator God who was perfect and created only perfect things was filling his new universe with souls. And what could be more perfect in a soul than perfect rationality? So after making a large number of perfect rational souls, the creator God decides to take a break, delegating the last bits of creation to some lesser deities who did their best to design vessels for these souls. The deities began by encasing the souls in that most perfect of shapes, the sphere, which explains why our heads are more or less round. But they quickly realized that the spherical heads would face difficulties and indignities as they rolled around the uneven surface of the earth. So the gods created bodies to carry the heads, and they animated each body with a second soul, vastly inferior because it was neither rational nor immortal. The second soul contained those dreadful but necessary disturbances: pleasure, first of all, evil's most powerful lure, then pains that make us run away from what is good. Besides these, boldness also and fear, foolish counselors both, then also the spirit of anger, hard to assuage, and expectation, easily led astray. These they fuse with unreasoning sense perception, and all venturing lust, and so, as was necessary, they constructed the mortal type of soul. Pleasures, emotions, senses, all were necessary evils. To give the divine head a bit of distance from the seething body and its foolish counsel, the gods invented the neck. Most creation myths situate a tribe or ancestor at the center of creation, so it seems odd to give the honor to a mental faculty, at least until you realize that this philosopher's myth makes philosophers look pretty darn good. It justifies their perpetual employment as the high priests of reason or as dispassionate philosopher kings. It's the ultimate rationalist fantasy. The passions are and ought only to be the servants of reason, to reverse Hume's formulation. And just in case there was any doubt about Plato's contempt for the passions, Timaeus adds that a man who masters his emotions will live a life of reason and justice and will be reborn into a celestial heaven of eternal happiness. Fuck, I gotta go. My laundry. Fuck.